Now, from the Columbia Basin, your local news source, this is iFIBER 1 News, presented in high definition. The #1 source for real-time local news, local sports headlines, and our very own Weather Center forecast covering the entire Columbia Basin. With your iFIBER 1 News team, reporting news in real time as it's happening. From the iFIBER Communications HD broadcast studio in Ephrata, Washington, this is iFIBER 1 News, and it starts now.
Welcome to iFIBER 1 News. I'm Cody Johnson with a weekly recap of your news from around the Columbia Basin. Tonight we look back at the attempt to get another murder trial for David Nichols and how a 70-year-old building at the Grant County International Airport found a new home. We look at terminally ill Soap Lake resident Brent Blake and his upcoming art show, and how people in Seattle set a world record. In sports, we look at how Gonzaga is doing on the hardwood, and we have the latest weather forecast for the Columbia Basin from the iFIBER 1 Weather Center. Our top story, David Nichols was convicted by a jury for the murder of Ephrata's Sage Monroe. His defense team asked for a new trial. Here with the report is Ryan Lancaster.
A dozen jurors were called back to testify as witnesses today during a hearing in Grant County Superior Court. These are the same jurors who in September convicted 31-year-old David Nichols of first-degree murder. Following a 2-month trial, Nichols was convicted of killing Ephrata resident Sage Monroe in 2009. His sentencing has been put off several times, most recently in late December when Nichols' defense attorneys argued for a new trial. At that time, Superior Court Judge Evan Spurline said a hearing was needed to determine if any juror misconduct took place or if the outcome of the trial might have been different had jurors heard additional evidence. This morning, 10 jurors took the stand and 2 were asked by phone about the potential misconduct. Most questions pertained to 3 allegations. The first was that a juror said she felt bad for Nichols since he was being tried in Grant County and, quote, they will take care of him. Only 1 juror today distinctly recalled the comment being made. The second allegation was that an Ephrata juror told other jurors she knew the Monroe family and pointed out that most people in the gallery during the trial were family members or friends of Monroe. Several jurors today remembered hearing statements like these, although most said no specifics were given, and others said they already knew Monroe's family members were in attendance, as at least one of them testified early on. The third allegation of misconduct concerned a juror offering an opinion on how methamphetamine addicts act, reportedly based on her medical experience as a nurse. There was purportedly further discussion about what a crime scene would look like had a meth user been involved. Today, several jurors did recall a broad discussion on what meth use looks like, but few recalled specifics or any talk about what kind of crime scene a meth user might leave behind. Spurline's more general questions today tried to determine whether any conversations among jurors before or during deliberations fell outside the body of evidence presented during the trial. Deputy Prosecutor Tyson Hill unsuccessfully objected to the more general questions, saying the hearing was in danger of turning into a, quote, fishing expedition. The hearing was still in session late this afternoon. iFIBER 1 News will bring you more about this case tomorrow.
Judge Spurline did not issue a ruling on whether the alleged juror misconduct and post-trial evidence could justify a new trial. Nichols' attorneys claim they have additional evidence they say points to Ephrata resident Ian Libby as Sage Monroe's killer. The defense has long alleged Libby and an accomplice were high on methamphetamines when Monroe caught them prowling his truck for guns. Prosecutors have said the new evidence is based on hearsay and call the alleged jury misconduct a fishing expedition. Spurline said he wants both sides to give him any remaining written briefings on disputed issues before he'll come to a final decision on a new trial. Despite the long process, Spurline said everything related to the motions must be a part of the record in the likely event of an appeal. An old Army building made for World War II was being torn down at the Grant County International Airport. The Port of Moses Lake found a new home for it.
A 70-year-old Quonset Hut is being moved in pieces from the Port of Moses Lake to an Everett Air Museum. Built in 1942 for use by the Army Air Corps, the structure now stands in the way of an incoming port tenant, an aircraft maintenance and repair company that needs space to traffic aircraft to and from an adjacent hangar. Port of Moses Lake Executive Director Pat Jones says in light of the Quonset Hut's history, he didn't want it to be cut up for the scrap heap.
It's got some important historical value, so we looked for someone who might be willing to preserve it for historic purposes, or at least put it to continued use.
Jones soon found an interested buyer. Based at Everett's Payne Field, the Historic Flight Foundation is dedicated to the collection and restoration of historic aircraft.
They're taking it down in pieces, they're marking the pieces, they're going to load it onto trucks and transport it over to Everett via trucks.
The foundation hired Moses Lake Superior Structures to disassemble and move the Quonset beginning last week. After it's reassembled in Everett, Jones says the Quonset Hut will stage a B-52 bomber and a DC-3 Pan Am passenger plane.
It's going to have a great future use, protecting these vintage aircraft and allowing the public to view them.
The new Port of Moses Lake tenant, Aviation Technical Services, is set to begin operations later this month. For iFIBER 1 News, this is Ryan Lancaster reporting.
The Ephrata City Council has heard a request for an exception to the change in rental rates for the Ephrata Recreation Center, and they turned it down.
The Ephrata City Council last night denied a request by the American Red Cross for a recreation center use fee exemption. In December, Ephrata Recreation Director Ray Towery recommended the city raise rental rates on the city's recreation center and end a long-standing tradition of waiving fees for nonprofit organizations. Nonprofits are now charged $25 per each 2-hour block of facility use, or up to $100 a day. A Red Cross spokesman this week said the nonprofit wants to continue using the facility for bi-monthly blood drives, but the $600 in annual rental fees would be hard to take. He said Ephrata blood drives tend to attract a lot of donors, and the Red Cross needs the large space. He added the Red Cross has not typically been charged fees for using similar facilities in other eastern Washington cities.
The Parks Commission actually unanimously recommends that the City Council not support the request from the Red Cross.
Not because they don't support the Red Cross, Towery said, but because the rec center needs revenue in order to survive, and they feel the new fee is fair. There's also concern other organizations would ask for an exemption if one was granted to the Red Cross. Some council members said they were okay with waiving the fee, but when Mayor Chris Jacobson called for a motion to approve the Red Cross exemption, none was made. For iFIBER 1 News, this is Ryan Lancaster reporting.
Renowned Soap Lake artist Brent Blake is looking to host another art show as he struggles with a terminal illness. Here with the report is Ryan Lancaster.
Brent Blake and Soap Lake have become nearly synonymous over the years. After retiring from an illustrious career as an architect in Seattle, Blake moved to town to work on his art and open what's become one of the area's social hubs, the Soap Lake Art Museum. The few locals who don't know of Blake are almost certainly familiar with his oft-talked-about brainchild, the giant lava lamp.
The minute I thought of that idea, 65-foot giant lava lamp, I thought to myself, this is the weirdest idea that I could have come up with. And I know in my mind that the media is going to have a great time with it. They're going to have real fun with it.
That they did, and the wacky idea opened the eyes of the world to a small town in eastern Washington.
That's a legacy, and it's part of the culture of Soap Lake no matter what happens. If nothing ever gets done or built, there was so much churning about the idea in all of the local papers and everything else that I'll be connected with that for forever.
But the giant lava lamp is just one of thousands of unconventional ideas the artist has come up with over the years. Many of Blake's sketches and other memorabilia were on display at a party held in his honor in November.
Brent's one of the most talented people I've ever known in my life. I mean, there's nothing the guy can't do.
The event was a sort of living wake put on by Blake's many friends shortly after he was diagnosed with leukemia. Doctors told Blake he had about 2 months to live.
And I, have no clue. I mean, I've been judged or been determined by the doctors that I'm terminal. I got a very short period of time, but the oddity of all that is that I feel quite, like I might go on for 20 years or something.
Blake says he didn't know what to expect, but he's feeling pretty good these days. The illness does make him a bit weak, but it's no match for his continual good humor.
And everybody says I look good, and that's because they're expecting me to look bad, I guess. So.
Blake turns 70 in July, although he says he feels a few decades younger than that.
I've always been 30 years old, up here, see. And then as I got older, on my 70th birthday, I thought to myself, I'm not sure I'm 30 anymore. I mean, I might be 37 or something, but I'm not 30 anymore.
He set the bar so damn high for the rest of us.
Yeah. The November party was a humbling experience for him.
It was, well, just difficult to, be hearing these things and not be affected by, and having great gratitude for the kindness of people and the goodness of people and whatever little influences I've had on people's lives.
Blake, who spent much of his youth growing up in Moses Lake, says he came back to the basin for a number of reasons.
I started looking when to come back. I was thinking I want to get over here because I'd like to ride my Harley, paint pictures, and poke around in caves. That was my objective, sort of.
He thought about settling in a number of towns in the area, but there was something about Soap Lake.
I don't know, it was like the healing elements of the lake were floating in the air, and it just was starting to affect me in some odd manner. And then I kept meeting interesting people, like I'm in some kind of a movie. I keep kidding people that I love the movie I'm living in here. This is my instant lunch chair.
In 2000, he bought an old brick building that once housed a spa and remodeled it into an apartment and museum. There, he's hosted an uninterrupted stream of art events.
And then it became an ideal circumstance. I was living in a cool Seattle condo upstairs, and then I had a gallery space that I could display my own art or other people's art.
He's hosting another party on Saturday, February 2nd from 7 to 11 p.m. at the Soap Lake Art Museum. The event will feature live music and Blake's own work. Blake says everyone's invited.
Here in Soap Lake, there's people from every strata of life and every circumstance, and I've tried to be a friend to all of them and to be kind and good to everybody.
For more on the upcoming show, call 509-855-6131 or visit soaplakeforlocals.com. For iFIBER 1 News, this is Ryan Lancaster reporting.
Thanks, Ryan. Each of the people you see here have warrants for their arrest and are wanted by various law enforcement agencies. If you see any of these people, the DOC asks you not attempt to detain or apprehend them, but to call police. You can also call the Department of Corrections at 509-764-6180 during the day or 509-762-1160 after 5 p.m. We'll be right back after these messages with the latest weekend forecast from the iFIBER 1 Weather Center and sports, and we'll have some more news.